Alrighty, we're good to go. Hello, everybody. I'm here to talk about what's new in Blazor and .NET 9, focusing particularly on a bit of the render mode stuff. Can't cover everything that's new in Blazor and .NET 9 today. Bit of an introduction about me. I'm Lachlan Gordon. Pretty much all over the internet, I'm Lachlan W. Gordon. That QR code's for this presentation, so if there are any links you want, I'll show it again at the end. So if you feel like it, give it a scan. Pretty much built my career on Xamarin, and then when Blazor turned up, I was like, oh, this looks fun. So I got right into that and went pretty deep on some of the weirder situations of Blazor right from the early previews, and kept on loving Xamarin, Maui and Blazor ever since then. I'm also a double bass player in a country band called the Hypnic Jerks, and I love bike riding. So if you want to talk to me about any of those things, come find me later. So gonna do a bit of a crash course on the different Blazor render modes, even though a lot of this isn't new in .NET 9. Hopefully I can get you all up to speed. Bit of a show of hands, who's used Blazor? Cool, decent number. Who likes to use, you have to answer one or the other. Who likes WebAssembly? And who likes to go to the Signal R? And who likes to use hybrid Blazor? Kind of buried the lead on how many options there'd be there. So we'll cover a bit about how those ones work so we can get into what's new in the new stuff. Maybe tell everyone what the hybrid mode is. Sure thing. So hybrid mode is when you're running Blazor inside a Maui app, which means you can write your iOS, Android, or Windows desktop or Mac desktop, and maybe a few others as well, write that in Blazor, rather than writing it out of native controls or your various other approaches. So you don't need something like Electron anymore? Yeah, no more Electron, although, yeah, kind of, it's a similar approach to Electron in that it gives you a container around something that you write with web technology, and the web technology we use here is Blazor. But there's a bunch of extra cool stuff that makes it even better than Electron, which I'll get to soon. Sorry to any Electron lovers out there. We all love VS Code. So as a bit of a background, all the different pieces that fit together in the Blazor puzzle, you've got your HTML, JavaScript, CSS. That's in pretty much every website. Sitting behind that is a JavaScript runtime. Sitting behind that, maybe you've got a .NET runtime, and within there, you've got your .NET code, and then you've probably got some kind of file server as well. So that's kind of how Blazor works and how a lot of the web works, I guess, in a few different forms. And different modes kind of split what runs where. So if we explore a few situations, oldest website in the book, you got a file server, serves up HTML, JavaScript, CSS. The stuff on the left is running in the browser, and you got a file server on the right, and that all goes over HTTP. With me so far? .NET MVC, you had a lot of stuff happening on the server, and then it sent that page that's rendered on the server over to the client over HTTP. Of course, there's a bunch of edge cases of how other stuff happens, but that's the gist of it. You got a lot of stuff in the server, not a lot in the browser, and it's mostly over HTTP and kind of one request at a time sort of thing. Blazor WebAssembly completely shakes things up, and this was the first Blazor render mode we had. Now you can see the browser's taking up the bulk of the work with basically just a file server there. So file server ships out your .NET code and the .NET runtime. That all goes over into the browser, and then all your interactivity is happening inside .NET in your browser, right next to where you would usually run JavaScript. And then this little magic bit of interop keeps your WebAssembly and JavaScript talking to each other. That feeling good? SignalR came out at about the same time. The big difference between these two is your .NET Runtime and .NET Core are happening on the server. And then we've got a SignalR, which is mostly WebSockets, to join them together. So a lot of the code you write in Blazor will run almost identically in the browser. The difference is where's that code running. So if we flip back and forth between those two, we see the shift between where you're running the code. Then Blazor Hybrid, as Will brought up before. Now we've got the .NET Runtime and your .NET code happening either on desktop or on mobile. And you've got the JavaScript runtime and your HTML, CSS happening in the browser. Now that browser in question is really a web view within your app. But what's really interesting is the bit that's .NET is happening on the desktop or mobile in its normal .NET runtime. That's not running inside the web view. So you're not constrained by, I guess, the performance bottlenecks of running WebAssembly within there or running your JavaScript engine. That's .NET right on your machine. So that's the kind of the gist of the different modes, and then it's going to. I love WebAssembly, but what I really love is how they're blending them together now. I love WebAssembly because you can run your service for so cheap. I can just post anything on GitHub pages for free, and you've got great performance and great content delivery. Whereas if you're running SignalR and server, then you've got to pay for your Azure app service, which is maybe fine if you've got a customer paying, but for all the little prototypes that I like to spin up, WASM, love it. Any questions on kind of that foundation stuff? Yeah.
To what extent, do you have to choose this up front versus can you jump between those models?
Up until, so .NET 5 to 7, you were very much locked in terms of what Microsoft shipped. So when you say file new project, you choose WebAssembly or you choose Blazor Server. And then that project's going to pretty much be there. The main way around that is if you use a class library. So you could write your code in a Razor class library and then have either a WebAssembly or a Blazor Server app reference that, and then same with a Blazor Hybrid. So that was working. That works quite well. But I kind of found that even though it's a really fun experiment to have a solution with 20 different projects and lots of code sharing, it wasn't all that practical. Most people will just want the code to run one way or another, but there is a trade-off. So one of the big trade-offs with SignalR is it's slow if your client is a long way away, especially if they're on a satellite internet connection. If you've got a highly interactive app, then you're in trouble. But it is very good at talking to the database, and you've got all your code running on your server, which is safer and also faster initial loads. So you kind of got pros and cons, but until now, or until .NET 8, you were kind of stuck on one or the other. So I'll look a little bit now at how they work together in the new templates, and there's also a few features that help it make it easier to know where your code's running. So the templates we work with, Blazor WebAssembly standalone. They've changed the name, but that's basically the same since the .NET Core previews. Lots of little updates, but the concept is you've got a Blazor WebAssembly app. Blazor Server template used to be completely SignalR. We've just retired that template in favor of the Blazor web app, which is a bit further down. And then the .NET Maui Blazor Hybrid. slightly updated, keeps on getting new benefits of Maui and Blazor, but the concept is you've got a Maui app with a web view in it for running your Blazor code. Now, the Blazor web app came out in .NET 8, and then there's some more updates to that now. And what you can do here that's really interesting is choose your interactivity at runtime, or probably more likely at design time or code time and per component. So by default, when you spin up a new Blazor web app, it'll have interactive auto, which will dynamically choose between 3 different render modes. And sorry, I forgot to include another render mode before, which is server-side static rendering, which is, and there was some early hints of this in SignalR, and it keeps on spreading more and more in power of, rather than having to do all the updates through that SignalR JS interrupt bridge, your first page load will be rendered on the server and shipped out as HTML. And then once more stuff is ready, it can go interactive. So kind of the typical experience of where that would be really useful is first load on, if you're using the new Blazor web app, it will ship out your first load rendered server, sends down some very, well, what looks like your full web page, but is essentially static HTML. And on your first render, you'll see that it's static and not interactive. Then after a couple of seconds or split second, the SignalR connector will come online and your page will become interactive. So then you've got the full benefits of being able to write server-side code and having it very easy code-wise experience of how to split between there. And then if you choose to, you can have some of your components rendered as WebAssembly. So after your page is loaded, then it will load in the .NET runtime and your code, and that component can switch to being WebAssembly based. Yeah. Oh, cool. Just a warning. Good. I've deleted one of my slides. That's not real good. So one of the important new features, which we don't have a slide for, is render info, which lets you know in your code where is the code running. And I can show in a very quick demo a couple of examples of that. So here I've got Blazor running already. That's running in WebAssembly and is interactive. True. That's great. That means that if I had any interactive stuff on here, it would be talking to the .NET runtime through SignalR. Another example I've got running here. This is a Maui app running in Windows. You can see the renderer name there is WebView and also interactive true. And then the main one, the more complex one, is if you've got that Blazor web app, the first time it renders, it will tell you that the render name is server and interactive is false. And then as soon as you start doing some things and your code's ready, it'll change over to being is interactive true. You've got your SignalR there. You can start being interactive, doing fun stuff. And then if we look at this Blazor web app, no, not that one, sorry. This one here, I can choose my render mode of interactive server, interactive WebAssembly, interactive auto, or there are a couple of others as well, which you can either choose in a component, as we have here. So I can say this counter is always going to be interactive server or always interactive WebAssembly, or I can shift it around. I think the best time to do WebAssembly is something highly interactive, like a graph where you want to be able to mouse over things like that. Up until now, you'd be writing a lot of JavaScript to get that to work. Now, if you wanted to run it in a WebAssembly, in a Blazor server app, now you can do a lot more, write C# for more and more of your code and get all of the benefits. That's right on 15 minutes, and that's the gist of it. I've got more things if we feel about it, or I've got time for questions. All right, so there's the render modes. That's screenshot straight from the Learn docs. So yeah, you've got interactive auto, WebAssembly, server, and static server. A couple of other new things. We've got a better SignalR reconnect experience. So if your internet drops out, it used to just give you a horrible error basically saying it's dead, and then your customer would have to refresh, and they don't like that. They get angry at you. You could already write a nicer looking UI that has a refresh button, but baked into it now is a more friendly looking user interface, and there's also a couple of extra properties on that SignalR connection to help it reconnect better, but you still basically end up with a refresh of the page with a new process. So you have to still think about saving the data as you go yourself. Overscan for QuickGrid. QuickGrid was a new component in .NET 8. It's got a little bit better in terms of performance for scrolling. Input range. So inputs now have a range type. We've got some better dependency injection and some cool new keyboard handling stuff, which again, you can write more C# and less JavaScript. There's links to all the videos that are about Blazor. I don't expect you to write them down. Scan that QR code if you feel like it. And then back to me, there's also that same QR code. Any questions?